There's an extraordinary opportunity here, I think, that we all see. Certainly we notice among our own enterprise subscriber base, which is primarily Global 2000 companies, that there's extraordinary opportunity around digital, and we're definitely seeing our subscribers, spending more on digital. The issue, though, for them is that as it has become more strategic and more critical to their work, it's also they're asking more kind of foundational questions around, strategic direction with respect to roadmaps and sequencing of investments. What should their priorities be? What are the right tools for them? Do they have the right tools? Do they have the right stack? Which is a really interesting question that we see coming up more and more, both enterprise digital, employee digital stack, as well as marketing engagement external stacks. And then finally, what are best practices? And I think they're looking for, out of their agency and consultancy partners, more than just implementation experience and that kind of partnership, but also kind of answers to basic questions and some strategic direction as well. And so, there's a lot of places you can turn for that information, including traditional analyst firms. I founded Real Story Group 16 years ago because of this particular diagram. It was a magic quadrant, and I was actually the head of software development at a digital consultancy. And some of our clients were using Gartner Magic Quadrants to make decisions about the tools that we had to implement. And often this put us on the spot because they picked tools that simply were not working very well. Either were not a good fit or simply were just not particularly mature technology. And they'd say, but wait, it was in the upper right-hand quadrant. You, the implementer, you must be doing something wrong. And I thought, there's got to be a better way to tell the real story about what's actually going on here. What are vendors good at? What are they not good at? So we decided to found Real Story Group. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But I'm also disappointed to share that this still goes on. I mean, just even most recently, you have Forrester and Gartner both coming up with this idea of that there's a marketplace for so-called digital experience platforms, or DXPs. And this is completely ridiculous. This is basically working for the vendors who would like to pretend that they have something like a DXP. But in reality, digital experience, as you know, is more of a methodology and approach, and no digital leader in her right mind would think that she could buy digital experience in a single platform. Yet we have major analyst firms out there telling your clients, our subscribers, that such a thing really exists. And so it's really, I think, just another notion that a lot of the so-called thought leaders in this space are really out of touch, and that we need to get closer to where our clients are and what they're experiencing, and give them the kind of direction and leadership and strategic advice that they need. And so that's where Real Story Group comes in. We're exclusively a buyer's advocate for enterprises looking to invest in digital transformation. And we're a resource to digital agencies and consultancies like yourselves who are leading client transformation. Where we're different from traditional analyst firms, and where we're really disrupting the space, is that we never work for software vendors. So we're going to give you the real story, including the inside scoop about what really doesn't work with vendors and what's really working out there among the enterprise base. So this is really a kind of an advisory opportunity for you to partner with an analyst firm that makes you smarter and faster. And there's really 5 opportunities, I think, for you. One is to identify the best vendor partners for your firm, certainly to create better quadrants for prospects and clients, rather than having them turn to the Gartner Magic Quadrant or the Forrester Wave and tell you to try to justify what they saw there. And also, interestingly, I think uncovering opportunities through client and prospect benchmarking, and then creating custom pitch and project deliverables. And then finally, offering strategic digital advice, like some of the larger, digital players in this space. So let's get into this. I think one of the things that you can now get your hands on is like the inside scoop on a greater set of vendors, rather than just sort of the usual partners. And what's fascinating about this is that the digital landscapes that we see, particularly from an ISV or vendor perspective, have never been more fragmented, right? And so this brings a lot of complication, but also some opportunities for you. that if you've got the insider scoop on these, you can show expertise in all the key vendor players and not just the big ones. And you can also uncover vendors maybe you previously didn't know, but you should be aware of and maybe even potentially partner up with. You can obviously get competitive intelligence, but also identify promising open source solutions. And this is an area where traditional analyst firms typically don't cover open source solutions, except the very largest commercial enterprises who are also clients of those analyst firms. Whereas what you really need is research that shows all the potential different commercial and open source opportunities that are available for either for you to partner or for your clients to implement. So part of this means like getting to the right shortlist, right? And very often, particularly larger enterprises, will try to rely on traditional quadrants, but those are really, really underserving their customers. They're static. They tend to overweight certain things like how good is a vendor at marketing, and they also tend to favor the larger vendors who are also the analyst major clients. And so for you, the opportunity here is to create real quadrants, not magic quadrants, but real quadrants that are tailored just for your client specific circumstances and that are backed by some of the deepest research in the industry. So I invite you to try out Real Quadrant. You can try it for free on our website. And basically what you do is you identify a particular technology marketplace, either around marketing technology or digital workplace. Then you select and weight the attributes that are really important to your client, like the particular technologies that they're interested in terms of license and delivery models. And then most importantly, you weigh the importance of different business scenarios. So these are specific use cases that you can apply. And then that then generates a custom output of what's the best potential fit as opposed to a static Real Quadrant. So again, we can look at this one, which is an example for enterprise social collaboration. What are some of the use cases that are really critical to that client? How do you want to weight them? And then strategic considerations that are really important for any buyer around, long-term TCO, total cost of ownership, as well as technical debt and the all-important ecosystem, which of course includes you. And then, based on how you weight things, you can get two very different quadrant outputs. So you have this one on the left where Liferay and Plone are in the upper right sort of winners quadrant, and then you have one on the left where it's a very different set. The one on the right is a very different set of vendors. And the way that you got to these two different quadrants was because you emphasized different use cases and you emphasized different strategic considerations. And so that generates two plausible different outcomes that you can then apply for your clients. So there's various benefits for here. You can show obviously your depth of knowledge early in the sales process and quickly generate accurate and very complete shortlists, right, that don't rule out all of the vendors, and then justify your product recommendations based on deep research. And this fourth benefit, which is really near and dear to my heart, because this is why I founded Real Story Group in the first place, is to offer really better counterweights to some of the leading quadrants that are out there. So the third potential benefit here is to uncover project opportunities. And so the way that you can do this is through comprehensive benchmarking. And the idea here is that you can use this service to demonstrate where your clients and prospects are underperforming and compare them to their peers, and then help them compose and drive and accept actionable roadmaps that you can help them actually execute on. So once again, you can try this for free on our website. It's at Real Score in our tools section. And what we're really doing here is creating an effectiveness model. So it's really looking at organizational effectiveness across a series of disciplines. But the important thing then is it gives you an output where you can compare against other enterprises, and then more specifically, other enterprises in a particular vertical. So you can kind of measure, where am I at in terms of my effectiveness, say, with using web content management technology or digital asset management technology? Where do I stand relative to other enterprises? So here's an example of a Real Score output as a whole. The Real Score was 37%, so probably a little bit below average. We'll see that in a second. And then it gets into the raw scores in terms of organizational development, business capabilities, and systems. That's how we break it out for social collaboration. For external facing digital, it's going to obviously be a different set of criteria and a different set of questions. But once again, you get the overall score, and then you can more importantly, compare it against, what's the manufacturing industry average? Well, obviously, we're a bit low here relative, if I'm a manufacturing company, relative to how other manufacturing companies are doing. So this then tells me here are the areas that I really need to improve. Can also show you, of course, cross-industry average as well. So this is then a key deliverable that you can go back and working in partnership with your client, say, okay, these are areas where we need to, step up our game relative to either the digital community at large or the particular sector that we're in. So obviously you can drill down and get more detail here in terms of some of the specific elements around, just if we break out, take the business capabilities category, and we say here, okay, there's a whole set of, a subset of capabilities here around collaboration, social networking, employee engagement, so on and so forth. Where are we doing well? And in this one, the client maybe is doing a little bit better in terms of collaboration and social networking. They're obviously really lagging in terms of employee engagement. So maybe that's an area where the enterprise customer really needs to focus on, and that's an area where you can help them drive improvement, and then as you do, actually measure it and elevate their score. So again, it's about showing your depth of knowledge early in the process, getting internal client alignment around priorities, showing where they lag their sector peers, and then visually demonstrate how you can help them improve. And obviously, then part of your work is to really document roadmaps for long-term digital success. So this tool doesn't actually generate a roadmap for anyone. That's not work necessarily that we would do. We assume that that's work that you would do outside of the tool, because as you know, as consultancies and advisors, that every firm is going to be a little bit different. So, and you have methodologies for saying, okay, based on these sort of scoring, here's where we want to take you to the next level, and here's how we're going to get there. And so that's work for you to do, but obviously high value work for your clients. All right, I'll pause here again and just remind you that if you have any questions or comments, anything you agree with or disagree with, feel free to use the questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. So the other thing that these tools do is give you fast custom deliverables. So we know that particularly if you're in a hurry, you've got a last minute meeting, maybe you're on your mobile phone, it's a pitch or it's an ongoing project, it gives you custom charts and decks and spreadsheets that you can drop right into your own sort of client deliverables. So, one of the things, for example, that we often see in Real Quadrant is people saving these saved searches, but also then exporting results to Excel, both the diagrams as well as the raw data and some of the narrative. And then from Excel, they can play around with it, apply different weightings, or drop it into PowerPoint, very readily put it into a Word report, all these sorts of things. So here's an example of taking the web-based output, and then it shows that here's a multi-tab chart sheet in Excel with the actual charts, the weighting tables, the scores, the narrative strengths and weaknesses of the different vendors. So that's all backup for you. But then again, you can also manipulate the data yourself because it's in Excel, right? Another example is PowerPoint, going directly from the tools right into PowerPoint with detailed, high-level analyses and then breaking down into the actual detail. Once again, these are editable PowerPoints, so you can go in and add your own overlays and do what you need to do with this, put your own background and so forth. But the key thing is that we've already done the hard legwork of kind of outputting the basic charts and data into PowerPoint for you to use. So in terms of benefits, obviously, rapid assembly into project and pitch decks, you get the high-level analysis, the high-level information, but also the different narrative findings, including strengths and weaknesses and other things directly out of our research. So you don't have to, go into a PDF and list it. It's all right there in Excel or PowerPoint, so that if you and the client need to drill down further, you can, right? So like I said, the high-level analysis is there, but you can optionally add the deep background details to justify the analysis. Okay, the last area is really interesting, and it's around strategic digital advice. And so obviously this is an area of great opportunity, and I would say there's a real dearth in the marketplace of unbiased strategic digital advice. This is an area, I think, where all analyst firms struggle a little bit. Our focus has been really to develop reference models and that with these reference models, then you can adapt those to particular client circumstances. So by making these available to you, then you can also leverage these reference models, have deep qualitative research behind it, and also some quantitative backup. So here's an example. We've got an employee-centered reference model for the digital workplace, similar one on the customer-centered reference model on the digital marketing landscape. And so these are generic visions of how an enterprise can develop and ultimately enhance their digital stacks, but based on actual employee-centered needs around the sort of employee-centered design that I'm sure you advocate in these circumstances, or consumer-centered design, customer-centered design that you do in the digital marketing and digital engagement world. But this gives you a framework to actually leverage then to do a number of different things. So one pretty similar thing, one pretty common thing that we'll do on advisory calls, and that certainly our subscribers have done in kind of a self-service way, is to do some preliminary stoplight analysis. So, where are we effective? Where do we need, where are we lagging? Where are we, in the red, and we nearly, it's a very serious thing that we need to address. So it's a kind of a visual deliverable that tells the enterprise right now, okay, from an employee perspective, here's the areas where we're doing well, here's the area where we're not doing well. This can also, in a more qualitative way, help drive, this sort of digital transformation roadmap. Here's another more enterprise-focused reference model that we use quite frequently. And again, we have one for the employee experience side, and then this is the customer digital engagement side. And this is a kind of a traditional enterprise architecture stack, and it starts obviously with the data core data at the bottom, and then the content and engagement management layer in between. And we know that's where a lot of you work and where a lot of you add value. So it's around digital media asset management in purple, or web content experience management in green, marketing automation and email, and then social engagement in blue. But then, you need to obviously deliver that through a number of different intermediary services, including e-commerce, community, mobile middleware, OVPs, so on and so forth, out to a variety of different channels. And so, of course, this is what everyone wants to do. The question is, how do you get there? And also, what are the degrees of importance, and how do I apply this in a more specific way? So some of the things that agencies have done with this is sort of look at this from, what is your center, what's really important. So this would be, for example, for a major advocacy organization, they probably really want to focus first on marketing automation, make sure they get that right, that kind of machine is humming, and then build around that so the WCM and social engagement. So you're adapting the reference model for a specific client. Or here's another one, is a CPG or fast-moving consumer product good company. They're increasingly telling their stories through media, through images and videos. So their key engagement emphasis here is going to be on digital media asset management, getting that right, and the right set of tools and processes and experiences in place there, and then revolving some web experience management and social engagement around that. So a lot of this is really around using these reference models to find the right center, the right principles of leverage and emphasis for that particular client, right? But you have a kind of a baseline framework to do that against. And of course, this is backed by benchmarking as well as survey research that we've done that you can also leverage that show just in general what's happening out there in the world. And so one of the interesting questions that we always ask is describing your organization's journey towards a broader digital workplace. Probably no surprise to you that many organizations still conceive of their digital workplace in more traditional standard intranet or intranet plus collaboration environments, as opposed to where you would probably want to take them if this is one of your practice areas, which is a more holistic digital workplace experience. So, this kind of data we find is very refreshing, because we find that traditional analyst firms tend to over-exaggerate just how forward most enterprises are and how mature and advanced they are. And what's interesting about our research is, even among, though it is skewed somewhat towards the Global 2000, is really that we find when people are in an environment where they can be more comfortable and have more candor, that actually many of them are much less digitally mature and advanced than they might concede publicly. And this is really interesting, because one of the more common advisory questions that we get when our subscribers call us up on the phone is that, 95% of the time they'll tell me, Tony, we feel like we're behind, right? And the reality is, just mathematically, 95% of you can't be behind. So there's a perception out there, I think, that organizations are very advanced along this journey of digital transformation. And to be sure, there's some wonderful case studies out there, but I think traditional analyst firms tend to over-exaggerate what's going on, tend to cheerlead for the industry and for the vendors itself. And what you'll get from Real Story Group is like the real story. And in a way, helping people have a more candid, more human, more honest conversation about what they need to do and how you can really help them. Okay, so just to summarize some of the benefits for you from Real Story Group research is to build custom vendor evaluations based on multivariate analysis that's highly customized to a particular client environment, create visually rich strategic roadmaps, use proven digital reference models to help then modify and guide your customers' understanding, your clients' understanding their particular environment, and then back up your recommendations with benchmarking data and very simplified sorts of outputs. So I hope you found this useful and enlightening. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the GoToWebinar panel. And we have gotten some questions come in. So I'll introduce my colleague, Scott, who works on the business development side, who can kind of wrap up and talk about next steps. And I'll come back with some answers to your questions.
Great, thanks, Tony. Appreciate that. And as Tony mentioned, you're welcome to go on our site and try out any or all of these tools by clicking on the links for Real Score and Real Quadrants. You can also download an excerpt from the research at any time, so you can get a little bit better feel for our methodology and our writing style. We certainly encourage you to take a look at that. And then we do host these briefings on a weekly basis. So if DAM technology is something that you're focused on in your practice, we'll be hosting one next week that refers to how to select DAM technology in 2018. And we have some additional selection webinars coming up in the next few weeks that we certainly invite you to attend. You're also welcome to reach out to us at any time at explore@realstorygroup.com. We'd be happy to learn more about your practice and any ways that we could possibly be a resource for you moving forward. So Tony, I'll send things back to you, as it looks like there are a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, so the first one is from Vittorio. Hey, Vittorio, good to catch up with you again. He says, is the Nexus framework, does the scope extend to all foundations capabilities of digital transformation, including data analytics, cybersecurity, DevOps, or just focus on digital marketing and digital workplace only? Right now, it's just digital marketing and digital workplace. These are areas, Vittorio, we have traditionally been very, very deep. So we won't claim to cover the entire scope of what's involved in digital transformation, including the important things that you're talking about and around analytics and DevOps. We are expanding the scope this year. We'll be adding e-commerce research stream as well as a customer data platform, or CDP, vendor evaluation research, and we're constantly exploring other opportunities, for example, around RPA and so forth. But we have tended to focus on digital engagement. And so that's really employee-facing or customer-facing technologies that UX teams and marketers and digital workplace managers use to deliver better digital results. Okay. We've got another question from Anne-Marie. One of my clients is still convinced that SharePoint is a great Swiss Army knife and wants to use it for everything, including their public website and public portal. How can you help us get them to change their mind? That's a great question. And of course, SharePoint and to a lesser extent, or Office 365 play this and have this incredible gravitational effect. And we don't always see this just with Microsoft and SharePoint. We also see this, of course, sometimes with SAP, very much with Salesforce, where people will just license a whole collection of different Salesforce suites and then try to figure out what to do with them. And so it can be tough to come in as an outsider and an advocate and try to then dislodge that. And of course, every vendor wants to set themselves up as central in your stack. But I think that there's a variety of different ways of addressing this. I think one is benchmarking and saying, okay, where are you really right now? Like, where has SharePoint gotten you to, and why are your scores where they are? if that's the case. I think the second thing that you can do is, you know, have a really candid conversation and use our research as backup to say, here are the real strengths and weaknesses. It's not us who's saying this is an industry standard, the toughest critic saying that this is what SharePoint, or for that matter, Office 365, for that matter, you know, the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, what they're good at and what they're actually not very good at. And here's what other people are using them for. Here's what other people are not using them for. And so that then kind of opens up the conversation. I think the other thing that's useful is really looking at this from a stack perspective and, you know, showing some of the research we have on how digital stacks are generally expanding rather than contracting, and some of the emerging needs and emerging use cases that are out there and what they need if they think they're serious about that. So it's really a way of giving you different ways of probing just how serious they are. You know, at the end of the day, if they're going to be, you know, technology or vendor centric about this, and they're going to do that and they're going to die on that hill, then, you know, my advice to you would be not to die on that hill with them, and not to overpromise that you can deliver certain digital experiences if the underlying platform is SharePoint. And I think we have a lot of different research that can help point you in that direction. Okay, so with that, we've reached the bottom of the half hour, and I want to thank everyone for participating. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or call us or reach out to me or my colleague Scott. And want to wish you a great rest of your day and rest of your week, and let us know if there's any way we can help you and your team be more successful. So for Real Story Group, this is Tony Byrne and Scott Dill signing out. See you next time. Bye now.